The first night we heard the footsteps, I assumed it was the house settling. That was what everyone says about old homes in Cork, especially the stone ones built before records were properly kept. Floors shift, beams sigh. The past stretches its bones. Our house sat just outside Middleton, tucked behind hedgerows that swallowed sound and light. It had belonged to my husband's great-aunt, a woman no one spoke about beyond the fact that she died alone and left no will explaining why she kept the place sealed for decades. We moved in on a Thursday. By Sunday, the children refused to sleep. The footsteps came from the attic, slow, careful, as if whoever walked up there was trying not to be heard, failing just enough to remind us they were present. The attic was inaccessible from the inside. The only entrance was a narrow exterior hatch at the back of the house, nailed shut so long the wood had fused together. During the viewing, the estate agent joked that it was probably full of bats or old furniture. We laughed. We didn't open it. Now, lying in bed beneath the slanted ceilings, laughter felt obscene. At first, the sounds only came after midnight. A single step, a pause, another step, sometimes faint scratching, like fingernails testing the grain of wood. My husband, Declan, said it was birds. I told him birds didn't pace. On the fourth night, our youngest, Maeve, climbed into our bed with tears soaking her hair. She said someone was watching her through the ceiling. She pointed upward and whispered, "It moves when I move. Children say things. I know that. But children don't usually stop sleeping entirely." By the end of the first week, all three of them were exhausted, pale, jumping at every creak. Our oldest, Finn, refused to shower alone because he said the sound of water made it harder to hear the attic. That was when I began to listen more carefully. The footsteps weren't random. They followed us. If I walked from the kitchen to the sitting room, they moved overhead. If Declan stood still beneath the stairs, the steps stopped directly above him, always just out of sight, always retreating when approached. When we tried to access the attic hatch from outside, the scratching began instantly, fast, angry, as though whatever was up there knew we were near. We called a local builder. He never came back after climbing the ladder and shining his torch into the hatch. He came down white-faced and said only, "There's marks up there, old ones, like someone's been pacing the same path for years." When Declan asked him what kind of animal made footprints shaped like bare feet, the man packed his tools and left. That night, the footsteps grew heavier. I began to notice shadows, not full figures, just distortions in corners where light bent wrong. The attic door cast a silhouette through the ceiling, long and thin, like a person standing perfectly still. When I stared too long, it would dissolve. Declan said he saw nothing. The children saw everything. Maeve began drawing pictures of a tall shape with no face and too many joints. Finn said it leaned down from the rafters when he pretended to sleep. Our middle child, Ifa, said it wasn't a man at all. She said it was wearing the house. The scratching became rhythmic. 3 short scrapes. Pause. 3 again. I started hearing it even when I left the house. In the car, in the shop, a phantom sound following my thoughts. One evening after the children were asleep, I searched through the old boxes left behind in the spare room. Letters, deeds, church records. At the bottom of a trunk wrapped in cloth, I found a journal. It belonged to Declan's great-aunt. The pages spoke of isolation, of hearing movement overhead even when she lived alone, of shadows that retreated when she prayed and crept closer when she ignored them. One entry stopped my breath cold. It watches families, it prefers children, but it learns from mothers. Another entry described the attic not as a room, but as a mouth. I didn't tell Declan. The next morning I woke to silence. No footsteps, no scratching. The absence felt louder than the noise ever had. The children were calm for the first time in days. Declan smiled, relieved, and said whatever it was had finally moved on. I knew better. That afternoon, while folding laundry, I heard Maeve laugh upstairs, a soft, delighted sound. I followed it to her room and found her standing beneath the ceiling, arms raised. "He's closer now," she said happily. "He says thank you for listening." That night, the attic hatch creaked open on its own. We didn't hear it open. We heard it close. The footsteps were no longer above us. They were inside the walls, behind the plaster, beneath the floors, moving too smoothly, too confidently. The house felt occupied in a way I couldn't explain, like we were guests who had overstayed our welcome. I read the rest of the journal by torchlight. The final pages were frantic. The great-aunt wrote about how the spirit couldn't leave the house unless invited, how it needed permission from someone who belonged there, how it wore the shape of shadows until it learned the shape of a person. The last line read, "I gave it my face so it would leave the children alone." I heard footsteps on the stairs. Declan was asleep beside me. The children were quiet. The sound was measured, human, coming up slowly. I stood and opened the bedroom door. At the top of the stairs stood a figure made of darkness and wrong angles, wearing my posture, my height, my head tilted in the same way I did when I listened. Its face was unfinished, as if waiting. It raised a hand. I understood then. The spirit didn't watch families. It learned them. It needed someone to anchor it, someone who noticed, someone who listened, someone who stayed. Behind me, Maeve whispered from the doorway, "He says it's time." I stepped forward. The footsteps stopped. The house exhaled. When Declan woke the next morning, the attic hatch was sealed again. The children slept peacefully. The shadows were gone. I was gone too. But sometimes when the wind howls over Cork and old houses settle into the night, footsteps echo gently overhead. And if you listen closely, you might hear a woman pacing, watching, learning, waiting for the next family to move in.